Nothing a little elbow grease can't undo. There, back to their original state. Let me examine this further. This is certainly a clue of some sort. I copied the contents into my notebook. This bears a closer look. I wonder what's recorded on this side.
I'm pleased to see at least one of you has thought to turn the record over. Any good house party should include party games. This weekend is no exception. I have devised several little games of the mind to challenge your wits, and I hope you find the rewards for each to be worth the effort. You'll have to discover my little amusements on your own, however. I've scattered them all over this delightful island retreat. I hope that you will find them suitably entertaining.
It's a full sack of flour. There are some batteries buried under here. seems so obvious in retrospect. The flower stuck to bits of it. Aha! A fingerprint. This bears a closer look. There is no cause for that. I can't get them to fit. There is no cause for that. It's too dark to move around in there without stumbling. I transcribe the pertinent passages in my notebook. I transcribe the pertinent passages in my notebook. I transcribe the pertinent passages in my notebook. It's locked fast. It's really dark up there. I need a light source. Seems so obvious in retrospect. Locked. It's tightly locked.
Whoever it is, please leave us. My wife needs her rest.
Sorry about that, Rogers.
Not at all.
He's as tight as an owl. I expect nothing could wake him up. It would certainly be noticed if I rifled through his luggage. I better not. I don't think going through that would help. Either he's innocent, in which case I'd be grossly invading his privacy, or he's guilty, and surely wouldn't be daft enough to leave any evidence in his luggage. I don't need to lug this around with me. It's tightly locked. Locked. I can't open it. It's locked. A hawk with a fish in its talons. The bird theme is starting to get to me. Another seabird. This one looks like an albatross. Shocking. Locked. Morning is coming. I'd best get back to my bed. Well, I didn't get much rest, but at least I have something to show for it. I'd best see if everyone has come down for breakfast.
If what Narracott told Vera is true, and mind you, I take anything he says with a grain of salt, then they will not be sending a boat until at least Monday, even if the storm clears.
Wise to remember, Narracott's the odd man out here.
Yes, thanks to you, I believe, Blore.
At least nothing else has occurred.
I hope you are correct, Miss Claythorne. However, I feel compelled to draw your attention to this table's centerpiece.
Now 2 are broken. How odd.
Ah, Mr. Narracott, good morning. Since Mr. Marsden won't be joining us, there is an extra place for breakfast, although breakfast itself seems to be a trifle behind schedule.
I'm afraid there is no breakfast at present. Mrs. Rogers has not been able to carry on this morning.
What's the matter with the woman? I was promised fresh apple juice this morning.
I must tell you a sad piece of news. Mrs. Rogers died in her sleep.
Any theories about Mrs. Rogers' death?
She was a very skittish creature. And she had a shock last night. It might have been heart failure.
Her heart certainly failed to beat. What caused it to fail is the question.
Did you hear anything in the night?
No, my sleep was quite restful.
Thank you for your time, Miss Claythorne. Any theories about Mrs. Rogers' death, Judge?
I'm afraid it confirms my opinion that there is something very wrong on this island. It occurs to me that if these 2 deaths were not suicides or accidents, that Mr. Owen may very well be responsible. If so, he is almost certainly on this island somewhere.
I agree. I think we should find a way off this island immediately.
Did you hear anything in the night?
I confess I slept fitfully. Marsden's death, the storm, but I heard nothing. Possibly also due to the storm.
Understandable, Judge. Quite understandable.
Mr. Narracott, can your boat be repaired?
I doubt very seriously it can be repaired. Mr. Blore did a good job.
Steady on. I didn't know then how the land lay, did I? So you say.
If you find a means of leaving the island or of signaling the mainland, I'm sure we would all be in your debt.
And I'm sure all of us would help in any way we could.
Here, here. We're never going to leave the island. None of us are ever going to leave.
What were you hinting at concerning Marston's politics?
Only that he'd become mixed up with some foreigners. I think that's all I'd better say at present.
Thank you kindly, Judge. What was the cause of death?
Impossible to say offhand.
There must be an autopsy.
I certainly couldn't give a certificate without one.
When did you find out?
Rogers roused me at first light. He'd gotten up to light the stove and see to the power generator before waking her. When she didn't respond, he got me.
Can you tell when she died?
Without an autopsy, not for certain, but it must have been some hours ago. The body was quite cold.
Did you hear anything in the night?
No, although it appears I should have.
Thank you for your time, Doctor. Any theories about Mrs. Rogers' death?
We know that she consumed something last night. Dr. Armstrong told us so.
I, Mr. Lombard?
You gave her a sedative.
A small dose of Trianol, nothing more.
Doctors have made mistakes before.
You're suggesting I accidentally gave Mrs. Rogers an overdose?
Accidentally or otherwise. One death may have been an accident or suicide, but two in the space of a few hours?
Simply outrageous, man of my standing.
Any more questions, Mr. Narracott?
Did you hear anything in the night?
I'm a very light sleeper. In future, I hope everyone will bear that in mind. Yes, several times I heard something.
You didn't investigate?
With a judge, a detective, and an amateur sleuth in the house, you hardly need my poor skills in that line. I prefer to keep watch.
The hunter in his blind?
A good analogy, Judge.
You said you recognized Owen's voice.
I've had time to think it over, and I'm sure I did. But I see no reason to share that information with you.
Thank you, Lombard. Any theories about Mrs. Rogers' death?
Conscience.
What do you mean by that?
She was accused, together with her husband, of having deliberately murdered her former employer, an old lady. You all saw her last night. She broke down completely. The shock of her wickedness brought home to her was too much to bear. She literally died of fear.
Possibly, if there was cardiac weakness.
Call it, if you prefer, an act of God.
Thank you, Miss Brent. Any theories about Mrs. Rogers' death?
I'm sure Mrs. Rogers wasn't to blame. A good, loyal woman.
Did you hear anything in the night?
I thought I heard a voice calling my name. My wife, she died several years ago. I expect it was a dream.
General, you said you thought you recognized Lombard.
Did I? Yes, I expect I did. But I fail to see what business it might be of yours.
Good day to you, General. You're a detective, Mr. Bloor. Any theories?
I appreciate you recognizing the fact there's a professional present. I'd like to know what she had to eat or drink last night before she collapsed.
Rogers assures me she had nothing whatsoever.
Of course he would say that. But see here. They've done a murder and gotten away with it. Now she's all hysterical, likely to give the show away. She's a danger to her husband. That's what she is.
Oh, I should hardly think a man would do that to his wife.
You said you knew something about the history of this island.
Most of the old stuff can be found in the library. Its more recent history is just as interesting, though. But I'm not inclined to divulge that just yet.
That is all for now, Mr. Bloor.
Chapter 3. 8 little sailor boys traveling in Devon. One said he'd stay there, and then there were 7.
Rogers didn't let his wife's death get in the way of his custodial duties. I assume everyone has gone off on their own pursuits. I should do the same. Hello, Rogers.
Hello, sir. Was there anything you required?
Just looking around. That ham looks good.
Mrs. Rogers had a way with hams. Baked, boiled, fried, pickled, en casserole. Always a treat.
When will dinner be ready?
8 o'clock, sir, or close to it.
Have you noticed anything out of the ordinary since you arrived here at Rogers?
Just this, sir. This house is more like a museum than a residence. I've dusted every square inch, and I've found articles left behind by many previous owners, including the Robsons, that actress, and even the Admiralty. The only owners who seem to have left no mark at all are Mr. and Mrs. Owen,
I appreciate your candor, Mr. Rogers. A radiator. You can't have enough of them, really. It appears to be a portrait of the general. Must be quite old. He's standing with a very young woman. It's signed, "To John, my husband, Leslie." It's a rather bland landscape. Better to let the dead rest in peace. The flower stuck to bits of it. This is a good reference print for Mr. Marston. This appears to match Marston's fingerprint. Let's hope that holds.
Nice to have a break in the weather, although I don't expect it will last.
You don't seem concerned by the 2 deaths.
I remember a text that hung in my nursery as a child. Be sure thy sin will find thee out.
So in some way, Marston's and Mrs. Rogers' sins have found them out?
Of course. I have nothing to fear. I've committed no sin. You, if your story is true, have only been protecting your brother. God's law understands such a loving gesture, even if man's law does not.
What are you knitting?
A shawl for my niece.
It's quite subdued for a girl, isn't it?
A man would say that, of course. She is a modest child, and decent. These colors are most appropriate.
Have you seen Rogers?
He's in the kitchen, I think, preparing a cold supper.
That is all, Miss Brent.
Seems so close, as if I could almost jump across and leave this island behind me.
I'd hate for you to jump, Miss Claythorne. I'd miss you.
I think I'd miss you too.
Think someone on shore could see us?
If they used a telescope like the one on the patio outside my room, I expect they might.
What do you think of Lombard?
I think he's like last night's storm. Dark and wild and possibly dangerous.
But you like him even so?
I love storms.
Have you ever been in love?
I thought I was. I thought I could do anything for him.
What happened?
I'd rather not talk about it, if you don't mind.
I'm sorry the job here didn't work out for you.
It was only temporary. I want to be a teacher, not a secretary. I want another chance to teach more than anything in the world.
Tell me about yourself.
Mr. Narracott, would you think me terribly rude if I just wanted to stand here and look at the scenery before the next storm closes in?
No, I'm sorry I bothered you.
Oh, you didn't bother me. Quite the contrary. But now I'd just like to enjoy the scenery.
The waves are crashing here with particular violence. Nice peaceful spot you found for yourself, sir.
There is so little time. So little time.
I'm making a tour of the island, so to speak.
Quite the adventurer, aren't you?
Have you seen anything that might be useful to us?
You don't understand. You don't understand at all. I'm not sorry I came here. Oh, it was time. I'm content at last. It feels very strange to come to the end, not have to go on. I know now I will never leave. That's peace. Real peace.
Thank you, General. Stay well.
Maybe Owen has wings and is perched someplace we can't reach.
Or swimming around out there with the fish.
You think you'll find Owen?
If he's here, we'll find him.
Why don't you split up?
I suggested that.
The island isn't that big. I felt it was good to stick together to be sure every inch has been covered.
Have you seen Vera?
Miss Claythorne was up on Ship Rock when we searched up there.
Have you seen the General?
He was down on that little beach to the south of Ship Rock. He's definitely gaga, if you ask me.
Like he was in a trance, talking to his wife, asking her forgiveness. Creepy. He sent that Richmond fellow to his death for playing up to the missus. Make no mistake about that.
You look tired.
Miss Claythorne's concern for my well-being moves me far more than yours, Narracott. But thanks all the same.
Any conclusions?
Only that I'm damn glad I brought this along.
You have a gun? Why didn't you say something?
I would have used it if necessary.
Still, I don't like it very much.
Well, I don't care very much.
Any idea how we can get off the island?
When I was, well, a friend of mine, actually, when he was in the army, he saw a new parachute design that allowed you to steer. If you like, I can draw you a plan to construct a parachute like the one he saw.
That would be splendid. Thank you.
1 parachute per order. It's pretty crude, but I think you'll get the idea. I added a list of materials, too.
Thanks. Good day to you, Mr. Lombard. It's Lombard's plan for building a parachute. I'll copy it into my notebook. I need to subdue the bees first. They'll do me in for sure if I disrupt their artificial home. It's an old windmill. Impossible to say what it powers, if anything. There are some suitable-looking apples up near the top of this tree, but I can't reach them. Could you help me sew these sheets together to make a parachute?
I suppose I could. There's a sewing kit in the servants' quarters. The needles would work, but I don't think the thread would be strong enough.
I won't take up any more of your time, Miss Brent.
No one's hiding in there. I'd stake my reputation on it.
I've done some hunting in my day for some very elusive game. If Owen's in that house, he must be invisible.
Any luck at all?
There's no one on this island except our 9 selves.
Where haven't you searched?
The woodshed. I should have guessed he might be out there.
Have you reached any conclusions?
Maybe it was just an accident and a suicide. Or 2 accidents or 2 suicides for all I know.
That is all for now, Mr. Bloor.
Woodshed is empty.
This is a dead end. If Owen's buried under that wood pile, good riddance to him.
Have you searched the entire island?
Early days yet. Plenty of ground still to cover.
Good day to you, Mr. Blore. I can't walk around carrying an axe. They'll lock me up, or worse. The generator seems to be working fine. Let me examine this further.
If you'll forgive me, sir, I'm far too busy to talk with you at present.
I don't think she's in the mood for conversation. Goats. They look hungry. This thicket is rife with thorns. I can't get through it. That goat is a menace. wonder what these houses were used for before they were left to rot. I wonder what these houses were used for before they were left to rot. The grass is slippery and the slope is steep. I'd best stick to the path. Now is not the time for chatter. That isn't such a good idea. I need something here to use as a crossbar.
I asked Rogers what this Miss Brady had suffered from. In a certain form of cardiac trouble, when an attack comes on, an ampule of amyl nitrate is broken and inhaled. If amyl nitrate were withheld...
I see. No positive action must be taken. No arsenic to obtain and administer. Nothing definite at all.
And nothing could be proved against Rogers or his wife.
It explains our situation here quite neatly. There are crimes that cannot be brought home to their perpetrators by the usual methods.
A judge taking advantage of his position? No offense, Judge.
A doctor under the influence letting a scalpel slip? No offense, Doctor. The point is, it explains Mr. Unknown. He has, for reasons only he knows, decided to seek justice for certain crimes as he sees them.
And who among us is the only one that stands unaccused?
Ah, Mr. Narracott, right on cue.
Have you seen any of the others?
Before we came in here, I saw Miss Brent knitting on the patio as if she hadn't a care in the world.
Could you perform an autopsy on Mrs. Rogers?
I could, sir, but I won't. As Mr. Lombard so helpfully pointed out, it might be thought I had something to do with her death. It would be unethical for me to operate.
How much Trianol is missing from your supply?
I wouldn't know. I left the bottle with Rogers in case his wife required a second draft.
If you'll excuse me, Doctor. Have you seen any of the others?
I believe Mr. Blore and Mr. Lombard are off searching the island for Mr. Owen.
You didn't want to join them?
They are men accustomed to physical activity. I prefer to search for the truth with my mind.
Me too.
You think they'll find Mr. Owen?
Not in the sense you mean.
Where would you search for Mr. Owen?
Closer to home.
Any idea how we can get off the island?
I've allowed you to continue your own investigations, Mr. Narracott, because I disagree that being the odd man out makes you more suspect. On the contrary. But I've given you a good deal of advice already. It would be well if you thought for yourself for a while and let us get on with our game.
I've got a plan to get off the island. Can you help me build a parachute?
I'm not as strong as I once was, I'm afraid. Perhaps some of the others can assist you.
Thank you kindly, Judge.
The wind is picking up again, and there are white horses on the sea.
Has anyone seen the good doctor?
Here I am, Judge, just freshening up in my room before dinner.
How did your search go, Mr. Lombard?
Badly, Judge. I'm afraid I found nothing and lost Mr. Blore.
There's a squall moving in again. Shiprock's become quite windy.
Rogers? What is it, man?
The figures, sir. The figures in the middle of the table. Look, now another's gone. There's only 7. It doesn't make sense. What's going on? What's happening?
We can discuss this new development over dinner. It's ready, Rogers?
Yes, sir. It's only cold tongue and cold ham, sir.
We understand, Rogers.
Where's the general?
Last time I saw him was on that beach. You asked me about him, Narracott. Did you find him there?
Yes.
Did he say anything to you?
His mind was wandering.
Perhaps you'd be so good as to fetch the general, Mr. Narracott. We'll delay dinner for you both.
No need for that. He's dead. Down there on the beach, leaning against a rock like a stick of driftwood.
Chapter 4. 7 little sailor boys chopping up sticks. One chopped himself in halves, and then there were 6.
Rogers is a first-class butler. I'll say that for him.
Wife was a pretty good cook, too. Too bad we only got one meal out of her.
Ladies and gentlemen, back to the business at hand. I'm going to ask Mr. Narracott to continue his investigation.
But he's the last one who saw the general alive.
The last one who is willing to admit to it. Mr. Narracott?
Cause of death, Doctor?
The back of his skull was crushed with a blunt instrument.
Could the general's death have been an accident?
There were multiple wounds. Unless he repeatedly slammed the back of his head against a rock, I think we can safely rule out accident and suicide.
Which confirms what we've all come to suspect. The first 2 deaths were undoubtedly murder as well.
I concur.
Time of death?
Only a few minutes before he was found. Not more than 30 at the outside.
Do you have an alibi for that period of time?
Why, the judge and I were playing snooker.
Forgive me, Doctor, but you went up to your room, if you'll recall.
Oh, of course, of course. For a moment or two only.
If you'll excuse me, Doctor. Where were you during the half hour in question?
I won't deny that Lombard and I had split up by then. I was just wondering, collecting my thoughts, you might say.
How did you come to find the body?
I'd seen the old gent down on the beach when we searched the island. He seemed pretty confused. I saw the storm coming on, knew it was almost supper time. Thought I'd collect him.
See anyone else on the beach?
No, no one.
See anything of a murder weapon?
Plenty of solid Devon rocks about. I didn't see any blood, but the rock could have just been tossed in the surf.
One said he'd stay right there, and then there were 7.
Thank you, Miss Claythorne, for again calling our attention to the rhyme. It is significant without a doubt. We have one dead from having choked himself. Another overslept herself. Now a third wishes to remain in Devon, and his wish is granted to him in a most final manner.
That'll do, Mr. Bloor. Where were you during the half hour in question?
Up on Ship Rock, where we spoke.
The entire time?
Yes, until the wind came up. I thought I should get back before the storm.
You could see the beach from where you were?
I spent most of my time on the far side of the summit. But I did move to a position above the beach once or twice. I saw you talking to the general from there.
Yes. He seemed to know he was going to die.
Could that be because you were swinging a rock at his head?
He was quite alive when I left him. Did you see anyone else on the beach?
Yes, I saw Philip. Mr. Lombard and Mr. Bloor walking up the path from the beach. But that was earlier.
Anything else you can add, Vera?
No, nothing, I'm afraid.
Thank you for your time, Miss Claythorne. Where were you during the half hour in question?
After the doctor and I finished our game, I had a look around the library. I'm surprised to say I found one of my own books in there. I wonder which of the previous inhabitants of the island it belonged to.
Why not Owen?
My dear Mr. Bloor, it was perfectly clear to me some time ago, and after your search you must realize now as well. Mr. Owen is on this island. He, or she, is one of us.
No, no, no.
Young lady, this is no time for refusing to look facts in the face. We are all in grave danger. One of us is Mr. Unknown, and Mr. Unknown has no good planned for us.
I'm a well-known professional man. The mere idea that I could be suspected of murder is preposterous.
I, too, am a well-known person. That, my dear sir, proves less than nothing. Doctors have gone mad before now. Judges have gone mad. So have policemen.
What do you think we should do, Judge?
Be on our guard, especially at night.
I'd suggest prayer.
I'm not averse to prayer, Miss Brent, but I would supplement it with a locked door.
Anything else you'd like to add?
Yes. I've been asked why I trust you, Mr. Narracott, our odd man out, to lead these informal inquiries of ours. It is very simple. It is clear to me that Mr. Owen had not planned on you stopping here on the island with us.
Unless Bloor is Owen.
Stow that talk, Doctor.
An attempt has been made on your life.
So he says.
Right now, there is no one I trust more to get us out of this predicament.
Prettily spoken, Judge. I know you'll pardon me for saying this, but if you are Owen, you might want a bumbling amateur on the case more than a professional like Bloor.
I would hope we all answer Mr. Bloor's questions with equal candor.
Too right.
I am grateful for your assistance, Judge Wargrave. Where were you during the half hour in question?
On the front patio, knitting. I'd been there since just after breakfast. You spoke with me there.
We saw her too after we'd searched the house.
Thank you, Mr. Lombard, but I feel bound to add that there were many stretches of time throughout the morning when I was quite alone.
Who else did you see?
Almost everyone at one time or another, I should think. I saw the general walk off along that path towards Ship Rock. A minute or two later, Miss Claythorne headed in the same direction.
He went to the beach. I climbed the rock.
Rogers was also near me for a time, sweeping away some of the debris on the patio from last night's storm.
Very tidy chap, that Rogers.
I don't know if it's important, but I heard someone up above me near the telescope, but I don't know who it was.
Thank you, Miss Brent. Where were you during the half hour in question?
Mostly in the kitchen, sir, preparing dinner. I also washed dishes, swept the patio, where I saw Miss Brent knitting. Quietly cleaned the game room so as not to disturb the doctor and the judge. Made the beds, and chopped some more firewood.
I appreciate your candor, Mr. Rogers. Where were you during the half hour in question?
After Blore wandered off, I went back to that ruined fishing village. It seemed the most likely place for Owen to be hiding. When the weather closed in, I made a dash back here to the house.
Find any trace of Owen or anyone else on the island apart from us?
No, I wish I had.
Anything else you'd like to add?
Not at the moment.
Do you think I should use the parachute to try and reach the mainland?
Yes, I think I'll feel a lot safer with you gone.
Could you assist me with your plan?
I handed it to you on a platter, Narracott. Surely others can help you with the menial work. I will pilot it for you, however.
That better be my job.
As you like.
Thanks for your time, Mr. Lombard.
If I may sum up, we're trapped on this island at least till Monday morning. One of us is most certainly a homicidal maniac. None of us has a clear alibi for the time in which the General met his death. Have I forgotten anything?
Yes, it's storming again.
This might be a good time to explore the house unhindered.
Our Lord moves in far more mysterious ways than you can ever hope to uncover.
Perhaps, Miss Brent, but I'm still willing to have a go. Who do you think the killer is?
Very well. I'll humor you. Mr. Blore seems the most likely suspect.
Why?
He's already admitted he's checked up on all of us as part of his supposed job for Mr. Owen. People with secrets, especially those with secrets concerning possible murders, don't make their complicity common knowledge. It would take a man like Mr. Blore to ferret it out.
Any idea who Mr. Owen's next victim might be?
Forgive me, but I doubt he takes you very seriously. That leaves the judge as the biggest threat. Yes, if I were the killer, I'd go after the judge next.
That is all, Miss Brent. Candy, ice cream. The next feature will be beginning shortly.
Mr. Narracott!
We can't blame him for snooping about in the dark, Vera dear. I'm afraid it's in his nature.
Were you looking for us?
For you, certainly. Who do you think the killer is?
I'd feel uncomfortable answering that.
Please try. Our lives may depend on it.
I'm surprised you value my opinion so highly. But if I were to guess, I'd be forced to say Dr. Armstrong.
Why?
Well, who else has the opportunity to cover his tracks so well? I, for one, can't dispute him if he says potassium cyanide has been used. And 2 of the 3 victims have been poisoned. Surely that points to a doctor.
Some might say to a woman.
Really?
Any idea who Mr. Owen's next victim might be?
Well, if I were Mr. Owen, I'd kill Philip.
Thank you so much.
He's obviously the most experienced at getting out of tight places. Wouldn't that make him the most dangerous to Mr. Owen?
Thank you for your time, Miss Claythorne. And who do you think the killer is?
Wargrave. The recording called us prisoners at the bar. The whole plot smacks of a sense of criminal justice gone mad. From what Vera tells me, he let that Seaton chap swing just for the jollies. Wargrave's my bet. No doubt about it.
Any idea who Mr. Owen's next victim might be?
Well, if I were crass and selfish, come to think of it I am, I'd pick you. I don't much like you, Narracott.
Philip?
The swine has his sights on you, Vera, if you'd only see it. He doesn't deserve you.
Thanks for your time, Mr. Lombard. Ah, the movies. The Queen's Handmaiden, Gabrielle Steele. I find her style slightly histrionic. Ah, the movies. Last of the Borgias, starring Gabrielle Steele. I've never had the pleasure. Ah, the movies. Film is running, but nothing's being projected. Film is running, but nothing's being projected. I won't do that. That came apart rather easily. I can't see anything of interest. I can't open it. It's locked. I see nothing remarkable. I won't do that. The film has been spooled. Looked like a home movie of some sort. That isn't such a good idea. I won't do that. Nothing else to see about that. I can't get them to fit. The film has been spooled. Interesting film. I can't make heads nor tails of it. There is no cause for that. I can't get them to fit. Dr. Armstrong?
What? What? I must say, I don't think much of this barging in on people when they are...
Ministering to the sick?
I don't find that amusing, sir. Not in the slightest.
Dr. Armstrong, if it will relieve your mind at all, I don't think there's anyone alive on this island who truly believes you are a teetotaler.
Somehow that doesn't relieve my mind one bit.
You protest too much, then eye the drinks tray as if it were manna from heaven. You sneak off to your room to freshen up every chance you get.
All right, Mr. Narracott, you've made your point. What do you want?
Who do you think is the killer?
Miss Brent. Knitting, always knitting. Like Madame Defarge in A Tale of Two Cities. Madame Defarge knitted the names of those destined for the guillotine. Revenge, sir. It seems an apt analogy. Also, I don't much like Bible thumpers.
Have you any proof?
Proof, sir, is for the police. I have a doctor's instincts. My instinct tells me that anyone that self-righteous and repressed might easily turn to murder. What did she call Mrs. Rogers' death? An act of God. A woman like that could easily cast herself in the role of God's sword.
Any idea who Mr. Owen's next victim might be?
No idea, but I assure you I plan to see it as not I.
Better lock your door then, Doctor. I walked right in. Good evening, Doctor. The flower stuck to bits of it. This is a good reference print for Dr. Armstrong. Let me examine this further. This could use a closer look. This is a fairly sparse makeup case. Vera isn't the type to use much makeup, though. The flower stuck to bits of it. This is a good reference print for Miss Claythorne. Not that I think she's capable of murder. This bears a closer look. This could use a closer look. The flower stuck to bits of it. This is a good reference print for Miss Brent. Let me examine this further. This could use a closer look. This bears a closer look.
Come here, Mr. Narracott. Don't be shy, it's only me.
Communing with the dead, Judge?
In a way, the law is much like necromancy. We delve, the dead give up their secrets.
What has General Mackenzie told you?
Notice the picture of his dear wife. Leslie, I believe he said her name was. The glass has been smashed, perhaps by the same blunt object that did for the general.
But why?
If we knew that, we might be further along in our inquiries, don't you think? If I had to hazard a guess, I'd say it has something to do with love. It's one of the prime motives, you know. Greed, revenge, and love. Love has killed as many as either of the other two.
Who do you think the killer is?
Lombard is a man used to killing. He freely admits it. It could be a classic double bluff, plead that he is guilty so that we assume his innocence. He's used to taking matters into his own hands. If he suddenly decided for whatever reason that 10 people had to die, I doubt he'd sit still for natural causes.
Any idea who Mr. Owen's next victim will be?
If I were you, Mr. Narracott, I'd watch my own back. Blore is all bluster. I'm past my prime. Armstrong is easily manipulated. Miss Brent's Bible provides all her answers. Miss Claythorne is like a deer caught in onrushing headlights, which is why I suppose you and Mr. Lombard find her so attractive.
You don't miss much, do you?
I miss nothing. And if it doesn't seem too egotistical of me, I can't help feeling that Mr. Owen knows that. Even intended this mystery for me. Why, I can't say, but he didn't count on you, my young friend. I'm hoping that together we may yet thwart him.
I appreciate your candor, Judge. It appears to be a portrait of the General. Must be quite old. He's standing with a very young woman. It's signed, "To John, my husband, Leslie." I see nothing remarkable. There's nothing I can do for the victim now. Nothing else to see about that. That isn't such a good idea. I see nothing remarkable. Better to let the dead rest in peace. How goes the investigation, Blore?
Better than yours, I'll wager.
Who do you think the killer is?
Rogers, of course. In my experience, it's almost always a servant, and he's the only one still standing.
Roger's background seems like an open book. He may have had a motive for killing his wife, but why kill the others?
The judge thinks it's a maniac. That's motive enough.
Even maniacs have motives that make sense to them.
Perhaps. Not being one, I wouldn't have an opinion about that.
Any idea who Mr. Owen's next victim will be?
I'm the biggest threat to him. A professional investigator. He's lucky he's gone undetected this long. I'm closing in and he knows it.
Thanks, Blore. Everyone should be asleep by now. Those still awake must certainly be up to no good. Present company excluded, of course. It's tightly locked. It's locked fast. I can't open it. It's locked. He's as tight as an owl. I expect nothing could wake him up. It's locked fast.
No, Philip, you cannot come in.
My intentions are strictly honorable. I'm here to protect you.
I wouldn't believe him.
Patrick? Are you here to protect me as well?
If necessary.
Oh, that's very gallant of you. If true.
I only have your best interests at heart.
I, too.
Gentlemen, I appreciate your concern, but I will be quite all right. I intend to put furniture in front of all my doors. We all need sleep, I think. Please excuse me.
A piece of advice, Narracott. You may get the killer, but I intend to get the girl.
And if she's the killer?
Well, that will make for some rather interesting evenings at home, won't it?
I think it's time for me to get some sleep. I can barely keep my eyes open.
We're all a bit late this morning. I slept the clock round.
A sign of a clear conscience, Doctor? Or just a nightcap or two?
Uncalled for, Judge. Totally uncalled for.
No smell of coffee. The stove in the kitchen is cold.
Where's breakfast?
We were just wondering the same thing.
Miss Brent isn't in her room.
Has anyone else noticed the dining room is locked up tight?
Rogers did that, so no more Sailor Boy figurines could be broken.
He seems to have got the cart before the horse, if you ask me.
Kitchen door to the outside is locked as well.
Perhaps he's chopping firewood for the stove.
I confess I don't like it. Both Rogers and Miss Brent missing. Mr. Narracott, would you mind having a look around outside?
Certainly.
You don't mind if I tag along, I'm sure.
Good morning, Mr. Narracott. I'm afraid the sea is as high as ever. I doubt we'll see a boat from the mainland today.
Have you been wandering about the island alone, Miss Brent? Don't you realize that is an exceedingly foolish thing to do?
I'm in no danger when I'm alone, Mr. Blore.
She doesn't get it at all. I'm sticking to you, Narracott. Let's find Rogers. Rogers? Blimey, either he's a good 5 feet taller or...
Cut clean in half.
dead, of course.
Yes, we don't need Dr. Armstrong to tell us that.
Or to fix the cause of death. Axe looks cleaned off. A tidy chap like Rogers would have approved. Dining room key, I expect. He was holding it.
Rogers is now in his bedroom.
Look!
Chapter 5. 6 little sailor boys playing with a hive. A bumblebee stung one, and then there were 5.
My compliments to Miss Claythorne and Mr. Blore for breakfast.
We have to eat to keep our strength up.
I'm a domestic sort of man. I don't mind.
Since it is now certain the killer is following the rhyme over the fireplace in the front parlor, our course is clear. Miss Brent, you have an allergy to bee stings. The next little sailor boy is meant to lose his life in the same way. We will do our utmost to protect you.
I have something I'd like to say, since Mr. Owen is undoubtedly here in this room keeping his strength up. The others may have done what your recording claimed, but I am not guilty of anything. Beatrice Taylor died of her own sins, not by my hand. I feel certain you now see you were in error when you invited me here to face your judgment.
That's a nervy speech if you ask me. I was just doing my job.
Miss Brent, you cannot assume Owen is behaving rationally in any way. If you'd seen what he did to Rogers...
Doctor, I will thank you to keep your opinions to yourself. Coming from the bottom of a bottle as they do, they are worse than useless.
How dare you?
I'm sure Mr. Owen and I understand one another. I'm going to collect my knitting. I'll be on the front patio if anyone needs me.
I can't see anyone needing that woman. Ever.
If you'll excuse me, I'll just go up to my room and fresh... That is to say...
I must say, Mr. Narracott, I'm disappointed. 4 dead now. My confidence in you seems to have been misplaced. I may have to take more direct action.
There's been a murder. Surely I should use this time to thoroughly search for clues.